Welcome to Everyone Has a Story podcast. We're going to talk about judgments today. What are judgments? Now, some of our inclinations can be correct and they can be spot on. And then there's others that can be, for no better term, disastrous. Take, for example, I'm about 16, 17 years old. And every summer I played a lot of tennis tournaments. And this one particular tournament, I was one of the seeded player, which means I was one of the top 4 players expected to win this tournament. So I was feeling really good about my chances. I was really feeling good about how I was playing. And sure enough, I'm standing there looking at the draw, and I'm looking at my opponent, my first round opponent's name, and I didn't recognize the name. So none of us knew anything about him. And so now I'm starting to feel a little bit anxious because I don't know anything about this guy. And everybody else on the draw I knew, so I knew exactly how I would play each and every one of them because I have before, but this guy I didn't know. So sooner or later during the day, our names get called out to go to the tournament desk to pick up our balls, get introduced to each other, and be assigned a tennis court. So as I hear my name and I hear my opponent's name, I walk up and I see this guy walking towards me. And here's where judgments can go bad. He had a wholly white t-shirt, probably had perspiration stains on it, and probably everything else is mustard and ketchup from his hot dog from earlier that day. He had cut-off shorts on. He had baggy socks. He had 2, really, really inexpensive tennis rackets. And I'm thinking to myself immediately, oh my God, this is a great first round because I'm going to get on and off the court really quickly. I'm going to be all ready for my second round match. I already had who I was going to play in the second round before I even walked on the court with this guy. So we walk on the court and everybody's kind of really snickering at the guy and snickering at me because they just know it's going to be just a very, very quick match on my behalf. We get out there, and I think the 10-minute warm-up lasted longer than the match. This guy absolutely kicked my rear. I mean, he beat me so badly, so quickly, that I really didn't even know what the heck was happening. I still, to this day, have no idea how bad I got beat by this guy. And I walk off, and everybody's in shock because we didn't know this guy, but we all made this judgment against this guy that was completely wrong. This guy ended up winning the tournament, and actually for the next probably 2 months of the summer, probably was seeded number 1 in every tournament that we played in together because this guy was really a phenomenal player. He just chose to look like someone that just walked off the streets. And so I say this because that's what we're going to talk about today, because in our life, we have been conditioned to make judgments. And like I said, some can be spot on and some really wrong, like mine was. And it's, is it building that barrier between whatever we're making a judgment on before we even give it a chance to really show reality? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because in our world, I don't care if it's political, I don't care if it's work related and competition related, whatever, we make judgments on our opponents. We make judgments on people who don't always agree with us or people that we're just introduced to. And it's just something that we need to address and really, I think, correct in our personal lives and professional lives. And today, I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to judgments, I made a judgment about my guest speaker before I really got a chance to meet her. And I was spot on this one. This one is a true gift to all of us. And I can't wait to have her part of my episode today. So Jas, welcome. So let me introduce Jas Kiran Kaur. She's a founder of YourLitCoach, and she's a success and happiness coach. And I don't think anybody really exudes success and happiness as much as she does. So welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Roger. I'm right now actually exuding that big smile, not just because of the introduction, because of the beautiful story you shared. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we get started on the podcast?
I think, this particular story actually reminded me of what I'm right now doing as a coach. I'm in right now working with positive quotient, positive intelligence. And one of the things which comes to my mind when I was hearing that story is that that's how judgment works, right? Sometimes in that moment, you start judging the circumstance, sometimes the opponent, and sometimes your own faith, right? You start judging yourself. So it's interesting how it can be a strength in some situations, and in some situations, it can be the biggest disadvantage, which unfortunately in your case it was.
Oh man, and I'm still licking my wounds from, even though it was 50 years ago, I'm still licking my wounds. And every time I run into this guy, which we do from time to time, he has no problem reminding me how long that match lasted. In a fun way. We're good friends
Yeah.
today, but still, it was shocking. All right, so
Mhm.
let's get started. And once again, I just want to thank you for joining me today. So, success and happiness coach. Who are your clients? Who wants this? Who needs this?
The term success and happiness, I think if I ask it out loud, I would get as many hands raised in the audience as possible, because I think that's one of those essential things that everyone wants out of life: success in what they're doing and happiness in whatever they can. So my ideal client is that any individual who knows that they are made for bigger things, but somehow they are feeling right now stuck in whatever they are doing in life. They could be stuck in relationship patterns, at a toxic job, or in a fight between passion and pursuing their career. So I help individuals who know that they can succeed and are looking for support. That's what I do as a coach.
And, from our very first conversation, you've always made reference to judgments, how we all are guilty, and you just kind of verified that here a little while ago. But
Yeah.
let's really define, in your terms, what is a judgment?
I think my understanding of judgment has recently evolved. It was, I think of it as a character in my head, a character which developed before I even knew that there could be developing characters in my own head. So it starts when we are very young. It starts when we are doing things as told by our adults around us, by our caretakers, by our parents, by society. And I think initially the role of this particularly interesting character in our mind is to protect us. Because as kids, we are not aware what is the right thing to do and what could actually harm us. So the example of taking your hand near the stove and knowing at a point that, okay, if I keep it here, I might get burned. And then your reflexes work and you take it off. So I think judgments have always been an integral part of our being. But where it gets interesting is that as we grow up, we forget that our walls of our metaphorical walls of our mind are already filled with so many judgments about everything, not just about ourselves, about others, about the circumstances, that we actually forget when and where were these formed. And it comes to a point eventually where they actually hinder our growth. They become the reason why we are not taking risks. They become the reason why we are not stepping out of our comfort zones. So for me, Judge is a character that needs to be brought into light time and again, so that one can understand that where I am right now and where I need to go in life. Is that a direction I'm not taking a step in just because I'm afraid? Or is it some other reason? So it's a conversation that one needs to have with their judge.
And I know that you have a similar story of your past, your reality. So tell us, or just no better terms, what was your tipping point to say that I
Mhm.
need to stop making these particular judgments in your life?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting story, Roger. So for the longest time in my career, I was in a happy job. I was in a tech industry. I was working as a product manager, and I knew that there was this more sense of I wanted to do something more with my life. I wanted to be in a place where I actually enjoyed my job, irrespective of what was happening, and of course, make a direct impact to whosoever I was working with. I started pursuing my journey as a coach. And there came a point where everything was ready. I had quit my job. I was trained as a coach. And there was this night when I had to finally put out that announcement on LinkedIn and with my friend circle that, hey, I'm officially a certified coach. And I remember that night because for whatever reason, I just couldn't gather enough courage to post that and socially acknowledge and introduce myself as a coach. That's when I went into a coaching room session with Alan Cohen, who is also a very famous author and a coach. So in his coaching room, I shared my problem and I asked to be coached. His answer, uh, so he works with this interesting concept and he calls it two voices of coaching. So the first voice is the voice of fear. And at that time, I was very fearful of being judged. I was fearful that in this moment, when I put this out, when I announced that I am a coach now, everybody is going to judge me. Hell, I was judging myself in that moment. I was judging that what if I'm no good? What if this is just one of those projects which I've started with a lot of enthusiasm, but what if it fizzles away? My bosses are going to be on LinkedIn. They will maybe judge me. What about my friends? They know how silly I am, how funny I am, and how lazy I can be. How will how will they even imagine me as a coach? How will I actually become a happiness and success coach? While these were the thoughts which were directly coming from the voice of fear, Alan asked me to shift my perspective and think about what is the voice of love saying in that moment. And I think that is my tipping point because the moment I shifted that into my own mindset, when I went a little inside to find that answer, the voice clearly said that you only live once. And what if you don't try this? If you don't try this, you would never know what this road is going to look like for you. You have the necessary skill, you have the right support, and you are trained. You always had a willingness to help people. So why not try it today? And I think that was the tipping point. That was the conversation which made me feel that, okay, this is the time for me to go ahead and announce to the world that I am a life I'm a life and happiness coach.
So let's talk about that. You know,
Mhm.
when I made the judgment on my opponent that day on the tennis court,
Mhm.
you know, I made a judgment from my point of view. But then as I got my tail handed to me and I got beat very, very badly and very quickly by this guy, I was now
Mhm.
walking off that court to all of my friends, my peers. And I was walking off that court, and I remember vividly how I was really afraid on how they were going to judge me at that moment.
Mm.
You know, and so today we have those two different views, us making judgments on things and people, and what we think other people are thinking about us and what they're judging us on. So why do we need to be aware of this? Why is it important today to understand, does this really matter? Of course it does, but to what degree does it matter today?
Mm. I think, Roger, it is of highly, I would say it's highly important that we discuss this today because the generation, the times that we live in, and the kind of technological interventions we have around us these days. I think most of us are living under the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect talks about how all of us feel that we are the center of attention for everyone around us. But the reality isn't like that. We may look at someone's profile picture on Instagram, have a thought about them, but that's it. We are not thinking about them. But same goes for the person who's actually uploading that picture. For them, it is their world. They are depicting their life and they're constantly thinking and waiting, what will others say about me? What will they think about me? So I think it's again the protective mechanism of the judge inside our head that wants us to feel safe and protected all the time. But again, there comes a point when they actually hinder our growth. You cannot keep yourself safe and protected all the time. If you do that, you're always in a fixed mindset. you can never grow. You'll keep on repeating the same patterns and expect that your dreams will come into reality. But that wouldn't happen unless you get that momentum and step out of your own comfort zone.
So, how does an individual today become aware that they are walking down those two paths, one of
Mhm.
prejudging and sometimes being spot on and sometimes not, and then the other of being judged?
So I think a great place to start is to start being a little more reflective. And by that, I mean that reflection could be you just writing down at the end of the day what your day has been about. How have you been feeling? What were the events and how did they make you feel? Or that self reflection can also come with working with a therapist, a coach, and sometimes with your loved ones and partner. What this process of self reflection I have seen starts doing is that you become more aware of your activities, you become more aware of your thought processes. A simple decision to say buy a new TV, for some, it could be a spur of the moment buy, and for some, it could be a 2 weeks planning and discussion. So, getting more curious about how you make decisions in life. Where and at what points are you judging yourself for the decisions? And where at what points are you judging around yourself? I think that's a great place for anyone to start.
So, Jazz, you've mentioned fear a handful of times so far. It is scary to reflect, especially self-reflect.
Mhm.
Looking in that mirror, and looking at it really deeper than just what you see your reflection on can be
Yeah.
really scary. Walk us through how fear really relates to how we make judgments on others and how we think and anticipate what the judgments are going to be, what our peers and friends and family think of us.
I think I can begin to think of that by taking my own experience. So I remember the day I did put out that announcement. Of course, there was the sense of accomplishment that, hey, I did something I was scared to do. But at the same time, this expectation that I've been building for myself, the expectation I've been carrying from people around me, my parents and the society, it gives you no scope to fail, no scope to experiment. And I think that's where fear resides, and I think that's where fear gathers its strength from. It tells you that there is only one way. You can only succeed. Because if you fail, you are a failure. Nobody is going to respect you. Your self-worth gets tied into it. And I think that's where the downward spiral begins. So for me, I think the best way to look at it would be that this self-reflection is not a judgment. This is something which maybe I'm going to carry till the day I die. It might not be shared with anybody. It's just me trying to spell out who I am on a pen and with a pen and a paper. I cannot allow my judgment to be here because this is me accepting and acknowledging who I truly am. Because I think that's one of my favorite quotes that going inside is the only way out. So you need to become closer to your own self. You need to become a friend to your own self. Also, in times, you might also have to befriend the judge in you in order to actually move yourself from being a fixed mindset person to a person who can and live with a growth mindset.
So let's talk now about comparisons, because
Mhm.
it seems like when we get in the mode of making comparisons of others and of ourselves, we we do it almost spitefully. As I'm not the coach, but it always seems like it's coming out of spite. You
Hmm.
know, I love the quote, and I can't remember who really stated it, but it says, "Don't compare yourself to your day one to someone else's day 100." But
Yeah.
so tell us, where does comparisons come into this overhaul of trying to be judgment free?
I think there are two ways to look at it. One, It's easy to compare our lives to anybody else's today because we only see a glimpse of it. Social media is that beautiful lens which makes everything look really beautiful and glamorized, but we do not know the story behind it. We only say one beautiful highlight of the other person's day. And maybe we are comparing it to the least or the least impressive moment of our day. So, one is to actually have a moment and realize that this thing which I'm comparing to myself right now, is this really a fair comparison? This person actually could be on their day 100, but here I am on my day second, and I'm comparing myself to them. Another angle or another perspective to this would be that this comparison has always been outwardly. We are told, we are taught, and we are indoctrinated by our schools, an education system that we always put our role models outside us. But again, bringing back to the quote that once we start connecting with our own higher selves, which is something that is a part of us, resides in all of us, then we realize that this comparison with the outside world is actually not making much sense because each of us have their unique abilities and talents. And all I can do in my own lifetime is to make the best use of what gifts I have. Because this constant comparison with somebody who has it better than me or worse than me is never going to make me feel satiated. At the end of the day, there will always be people who are doing better than me and worse than me. That's why I think for me, befriending oneself is where the journey starts.
So the habit of judging both directions, does it apply to a business and an organization as well as individuals?
I think it does. And I think it does. And it's easier for organizations and businesses to take a note of it. Because unlike personal lives, everything at a professional workplace is measurable. You can measure when things are not going right. There are indicators. They could be hidden in your numbers and reports, but there is always an indication that something is going off the chart, something is not moving in the right direction. And I believe judgments, if you think of the organization as a living organism, I think judgments become that disease which slowly spreads. It doesn't matter which department or which direction it comes from. It slowly infects the entire organization. Judgments at workplace could happen at a personal level, could happen due to cultural differences, due to mindset differences. But at the same time, judgments of the mission of an organization, how an organization puts itself out there, also affects everybody who works at the organization.
So another favorite quote of mine is from Thomas Edison while he was in the process of trying to develop the light bulb. All of his peers, all of his colleagues used to laugh at him, mock at him, and just saying, Thomas, you failed 10,000 times. And he'd always look at him and shake his finger and say, no, I found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And so it takes a different mindset to not worry about other people's opinions and judgments on you. So put your coaching hat on and tell us, how do we get to that level of Thomas Edison and not really worrying about the mockery of his friends and colleagues, but to really stay firm and really holding true to your passion or to what you want your gift to be known for?
Definitely. I think if I put my coaching hat on, my first priority in that case is to tell that individual out there that everybody has an infinite source of energy, but there are finite ways in which you can expend that energy today. And by that, I mean that whatever is that fuels you in whatever direction of life, the areas you want to succeed in, the areas you want to achieve success and be happy in, all of these areas require a lot of energy from you. And it is your personal choice and your decision where to put that energy. You can spend all of that energy trying to be in this mad rat race, trying to win from one position to the next position, from one relationship to next relationship, hoping things will improve. Or the right way, or I think in my opinion, it's also the most challenging and interesting way, is to utilize that energy in improving yourself. Because once you start doing that, all of these fears will also start dissolving around you, because then you realize that I am just moving in my own lane. I do not have time, I do not have energy to actually keep comparing my each win and success with what's happening with people around me. In that moment, you are doing what is best for your capabilities. And I think that's one of the greatest joys I have as a coach, that I get to experience that with my clients when I see that transformation happening within them. And they realize that this thought, which they've been carrying for a long time, that they are stuck and they only have limited options, that limitation just breaks away. And they realize that I make my own options and I can choose happiness and success.
Well said. And that's those words right there why you were my guest today. So thank you for that. And I can't thank you enough for being my guest today and joining me today, because this is really an important topic that we all need to hear and embrace, and really try to find that right path to to find ourselves weaning away from prejudgments from our own, and worrying about what other people are judging us on as well. So before I let you leave, though, you are a source of good positive energy and good inspiration. Leave us one more little tidbit of Jas's inspiration to close out the episode.
Definitely. I think, again, this comes from my own personal experience, that I think the happiness factor also comes from authenticity. And authenticity can only happen if you allow yourself to be vulnerable. So even though it's challenging, even though the notorious thoughts in your head would say that you need to be safe, you shouldn't go out of your comfort zone, I think being vulnerable is the beautiful gift that we have as humans. I'm not asking you to be vulnerable with people you're uncomfortable with. But of course, being vulnerable in a safe space with a certain set of people, I think it's an experience which actually allows you to flourish into the best version of yourself. So I think it's time that we all spend a little time reflecting on ourselves, figuring out what is it that stops our growth today, and start your journey from there.
Well, I know our conversations and what you have taught me has always made me feel happier and more successful. So thank you for that. And if someone wants to reach out to you and get to know you like I've got to know you, how can they get in contact with you?
So please look me up on LinkedIn. My official name is Jas Kiran Kaur. I'm always online on LinkedIn. I would be happy to get in touch with you. And apart from that, I'm also available on Instagram. My Instagram handle is YourLitCoachjas, where I also respond to DMs and create content which comes from the heart and also motivates others for happiness and success.
Well, you are a gift to all of us. So thank you for that. And thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much, Roger. It has been a pleasure.
My podcast wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for my sponsors and my great supporters. So let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of them. First of all, I want to thank Rebecca at Custom Bookkeeping and Accounting, delivering trustworthy bookkeeping services since 2003. Dave and Dara at Virtues Matter, making this world a much happier place to be with their Virtues card apps, coaching, and workshops. Stephen at Buller Accounting, giving business owners depth and insight to their numbers. Eric and his team at Ivy Cat Web Design, the real superheroes of web development and design. Jennifer and Jean at the Seavers Real Estate Team, serving Pierce and Kitsap counties with their home buying and selling needs. Maury at the Maury Method, the world's only brainwave entrainment engineer, helping everyone have more clarity, less stress, and overall better brain health. Priya at Pivot My Profit, helping individuals and businesses have better control of their finances and more money at the end of their day. Melissa at the Soul Vibe Energy High, the queen of the aha moments, helping individuals find those holes in their cups, repair the hole, and gain back their positive energy. And finally, Rick at West Sound Recording. You talk, they do all the rest. Thank you, Rick, for all your efforts with the production and editing of my podcast.